Now we move to stave number 2, the second chapter called stave number 2, in which the first of the 3 ghosts or the spirits appears. On page number 41, the first paragraph on this page, reading, "The curtains of his bed were drawn aside." Of course, the curtains of Scrooge's bed. "I tell you by a hand." The narrator tells you, the reader, that the curtains are being drawn by someone's hand or something's hand. Not the curtains at his feet, not the curtains at his back, but those to which his face was addressed just in front of him. The curtains in front of him. The curtains of his bed were drawn aside again, and Scrooge, starting up, surprised, starting up into a half recumbent, in a half position in which he lies down on his bed, into a half recumbent attitude, found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor, with a ghost. It is unearthly, not belonging to earth, not belonging to the world of humans. Who drew them? He drew these curtains. As close to it as I am now to you, and I am standing in the spirit at your elbow. They become so close to each other, a close confrontation between Scrooge and the first ghost of a Christmas. It, the ghost, the first ghost, it's, we find here a full description of that ghost. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man. So his features gather between those of a child and an old man, just in one figure. Viewed through some supernatural medium, which is the ghost itself, which gave him the appearance of having receded from the view, having retreated from the scene, and being diminished, in size, to a child's proportions, to a child's features, young features of a child. Its hair, which hung about its neck, covered its neck, from the front and the back, and down its back was white. So he had white hair. As of his age, he's aging. And yet the face hadn't a wrinkle in it. He had no wrinkles. And the tenderest bloom was on the skin. His skin was blooming, flourishing. He's young. So we have a young face of a child and gray or a white hair of an old man, just in one figure, one face, in one head. The arms, his arms were very long, and muscular, so strong. The hands, the same, the same strength is noticed in the hands, as if its hold were of uncommon strength, its hold. Its legs and feet, most delicately formed, most carefully and skillfully formed, created. those legs and feet were like those upper members, the hands, the face, okay? All of these were bare. It wore a tunic. What is a tunic? A tunic is a loose, sleeveless, loose and sleeveless clothes. A loose and sleeveless attire. An attire, rida, that is loose, okay, covering from the head to the knees maybe, and even to the toes. Okay, it is loose and sleeveless, without sleeves. This tunic of the purest white, so white, and round its waist was bound a lustrous belt, a very smooth and shiny belt, the sheen of which, the sheen of this belt, the glowing, the shining of this belt was beautiful. It held the branch, okay, this ghost held a branch of fresh, okay, freshly cut, of course, a fresh green holly. What is a holly? A holly is a small berry tree that has glowing and shining leaves. A holly is a small berry tree. And in singular contradiction of that twin tree emblem, in contradictory image or picture of that frosty or cold picture of that ghost, had its dress trimmed with summer flowers. His dress was decorated with summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head, above his head, there sprang a bright, clear jet of light. A streak of light was emitting from his head upwards, by which all this, his dress, by which all this was visible, was seen, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using. It was useful in that way, to let Scrooge see the dress, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using in its duller moments. A great extinguisher for a cap, which it now held under its arm. The ghost held under its arm an extinguisher for a cap, and a candle snuffer, a candle extinguisher. Now move to page number 45, where we see another scene in which Scrooge and the first ghost, the ghost of Christmas past, go together to visit the school of Scrooge when he was just a boy, a little boy. The first paragraph on page number 45. The school isn't quite deserted, said the ghost. A solitary child, a single child, who is solitary, alone, isolated, neglected by his friends, so his classmates neglect him. And so he is solitary, alone, is left there still. Scrooge said he knew it, and he sobbed. He knew this boy because it was himself. This boy was Scrooge himself when a young boy. And so he sobbed. He began to cry. Then they left the high road by a well-remembered lane, well-remembered, of course, by Scrooge himself. It is the place where Scrooge was educated, and soon approached a mansion of dull red brick, of a dark, dreary brick, made of dark and dreary brick, with a little weather cock surmounted cupola on the roof. Of course, this weathercock surmounted cupola is this tool used to determine the direction of the wind on windy days, and a bell hanging in it. It was a large house. This place is the school itself. Here we can find a description, a full, intricate, a detailed description of the house, which is the school, Scrooge's school. But one of broken fortunes, one of bad fortunes, very poor place, for the spacious offices were little used. Their walls were damp. Damp means wet. The walls are wet. And muzzy. Muzzy, of course, it means grassy, full of grass all over the place. It is grassy, muzzy. Their windows broken, and their grates decayed. Fowls clucked. The fowls are raised birds. Raised birds. Clucked made short sounds, and strutted, walked proudly. The fowls walked proudly in the stables, the barns, okay, the stable, the barns, and the coach houses, the stations, the vehicle stations, and sheds. The sheds are the warehouses. The warehouses were overrun with grass, again grass, green plants, of course. Nor was it more retentive of its ancient state within. This is the description of the place from without, but what about within, from the inside? He moves on to describe the place from within. For entering the dreary hall, that gloomy hall inside, they entered the dreary hall from within, and glancing through the open doors of many rooms of that school, they found these rooms poorly furnished, poorly equipped, cold and vast. There was an earthy savour in the air. The smell, of mud, earthy savour, the smell of mud in the air. A chilly, cold, very cold, a chilly bareness, nakedness. It's empty, an empty place, empty and cold. An empty and cold school in the place, which associated itself somehow with too much getting up by candlelight and not too much to eat. So there was only candlelight that lit the place, set it on light, and there wasn't much to eat. Then they went, the ghost of course and Scrooge, across the hall to a door at the back of the house. It opened before them and disclosed, revealed a long, bare, melancholy room, another room, described as being long, bare, it's an empty place, an empty room, and melancholic, made barer still by lines of plain deal forms. What are the plain deal forms? The school benches, the class benches, and desks. At one of these desks, a lonely boy, he's still alone, was reading near a feeble fire, a very weak fire. And here we can find a reference in which Dickens compares the situation, the condition of this little boy reading by a feeble fire at his school. And Scrooge's clerk, in this dreary place in which he works for Scrooge, there's a kind of comparison Okay? And Scrooge sat down upon a form. Scrooge sat down by this boy in one of the forms, in one of the benches, and wept to see his poor forgotten self. He wept for himself as he used to be. Then in another scene, on page number 47, Scrooge urges the ghost of Christmas past, to have another scene from Christmas, maybe a happier one. He doesn't know, of course. Let us see another Christmas. Let us see, I'm reading now from page number 47. Let us see another Christmas. Scrooge's former self, as a young boy, grew larger, bigger, older at the words. Suddenly, he moved from one place to another, from a time to another. Okay? All of a sudden. And the room became a little darker. The same school, the same room and the same school, darker and more dirty. The panels shrunk. The panels are the logs, the logs of wood. The windows cracked, damaged but not broken, not completely broken. Fragments of plaster fell out of the ceiling, and the naked laths, the naked logs of the ceiling were shown instead. It's a desolate place. But how all this was brought about, Scrooge knew no more than you do. And here the narrator, who is Dickens himself, is addressing the reader by the word you, by this pronoun, you. He doesn't know how this place has come to be like that. He only knew that it was quite correct, that everything had happened so, that there he was, alone again, Scrooge himself as a young boy, then as a young man, when all the other boys had gone home for the jolly holidays. His classmates have left the place, have left school to join their families for the jolly holidays, for the happy holidays of Christmas. But he's alone, still alone. He wasn't reading now, but walking up and down despairingly, desperately. He is so disappointed that he's alone. Everything around him gives him a gloomy, a melancholic sense of things. Scrooge looked at the ghost, and with a mournful shaking of his head, glanced anxiously towards the door of this room, schoolroom. It opened. The door opened, and a little girl, his sister, by the way, she is his sister, much younger than the boy, younger than Scrooge himself at the time, of course, came darting in. To dart is to move quickly and suddenly. She came darting in, and putting her arms about his neck, and often kissing him, addressed him as her dear, dear brother. She is his sister. I have come to bring you home, dear brother, said the child, clapping her tiny hands and bending down to laugh. To bring you home, home, home. Now move on to page number 49.